Hello coders, welcome to another How to Code Well Symfony tutorial. Today we're going to take a look at how we can constrain our routes to only run against certain methods. So for example, get requests or post requests or delete requests, and how we can write rules for our routes to say that these requests can only be made by those methods. Let's get into the code. On the left-hand side here, we've got a series of requests. We've got a get request to user/1. And if I send that request, we can see that we get a 200 OK. The second request is to the edit. That's /user/1 and then /edit. If we use a get request and send that, we actually get a 405 method not allowed. However, if we scroll down and we ran a post request against that same address and send the request, we are going to get a 200 OK. Likewise, if I scroll down to the next request where it's the deleting of a user and we run it using a get request, we're also going to get a 405 method not found. However, if we ran the same request but using the method delete, we're going to get a 200 OK. So how does Symfony know that certain requests are allowed using certain methods? Well, let's take a look at the controller. In the user controller, we have the index route, we have the edit route, and we have the delete route. Each of these route PHP attributes have a method. The method can be an array or a string which says which method this route must be used against. So in this case, the delete route must be used using the delete HTTP request. Likewise, the edit route must be used with the post request. And of course, the index route, where we're getting the user by the ID, is a get request. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry, because what I'm going to do is rebuild one of these routes to demonstrate how we can constrain the routes by the methods that are required. So I'm going to remove the delete method. I'm then going to create the public function delete. This, of course, is going to return a JSON response. The argument of the delete method is going to be an integer, and it's going to be called ID. Now, before we go any further and before anybody screams at me, you shouldn't be supplying IDs to these kind of routes. This is just for an example, educational purpose. Do not supply numerical IDs to these kind of routes, especially if you're doing edits or updates. You could be faced with incremental attacks by just changing the ID to the next ID above and then running the delete method and deleting the user. So please, please, please do not supply numerical IDs to these kinds of methods. Obviously, there's nothing running in this project. It is just a series of routes. I'm only using this for educational purposes. If you are needing to supply any form of unique identifier to these particular routes, then I certainly recommend you using something like a GUID or a UID. These are very long IDs and they're very unique and they don't have any incremental issues such as the numerical IDs that we're playing with today. Anyway, let's get back to the code. The delete method is going to return a JSON response with the method delete. The user ID is going to be the ID that's passed. So let's go and create the route for this delete method. This, of course, is going to be a PHP route attribute. The attribute is going to have an address, which is /user/ and then the parameter ID /delete. It is going to have the parameter name, and the name is going to have the value of app_user_delete. The route is also going to have a requirement, and that is going to require the ID to have a pattern of \D+, making sure that the ID is a digit. So let's save our work and make sure that we're still serving the application. Back to our demo.http file, if I was to send the request, we're going to get a 200 OK. If I copied this and sent it as a get request, and this is the same if I supply a post request to this address. So this means that the delete address can be accessed by any method of HTTP. But what we want to do is constrain it to just the delete method. This will mean that both the post request and the get request will return a 405, but the delete request will return a 200 OK. So let's go back to the code. In the root attribute, we need to supply the parameter methods. Methods can be a string or an array. In this case, I'm going to set it as an array, and we're going to supply the method of delete. If we save our work and went back to the demo.http file, if we scroll down to the post request of the delete address and send the request, we're going to get a 405 method not allowed. We can see what is allowed because we have the allow property here, which is delete. Which means if we sent the get request, we're also going to get a 405. But if we sent the delete request, we're going to get a 200 OK. It is very important to constrain your roots to use the methods that are only acceptable for the process that you want to run. So for example, if you're going to edit something, then you would use a post request. If you're going to list something, then you're going to have a get request. But don't use post requests for get requests, and don't use delete requests for post requests either. Get requests should only get a resource. Post requests are going to post a payload, some data, and a delete request is going to delete that record or that resource. If you found this tutorial helpful, then do let me know. Give it a thumbs up, share it around to those that might find it useful too. The full write-up of this tutorial and all the other tutorials that I have will be on howtocodewell.net. And whilst you're there, do consider subscribing to get the next tutorials coming through. Happy coding, everyone, and I'll see you again in the next Symfony tutorial.